I used to think family gatherings were sacred. A time when people you loved most sat around a table, sharing laughter and stories, no matter who you were or what you had. But that illusion shattered the night I was asked, politely, of course, to take a seat at the overflow table. You know, the one near the restrooms, tucked away like an afterthought. At first, I thought it was a mistake. That they just didn't notice there weren't enough chairs. But when my cousin's new boyfriend, who had joined the family a whole 5 minutes ago, was ushered to the main table with a smile, it hit me. This wasn't an oversight. It was a choice. I remember sitting there, alone, my plate untouched as laughter echoed across the room. Someone even said, not quietly enough, "He'll understand when he's more successful." And in that moment, something inside me cracked, not in anger, but in clarity. They thought success was measured in titles and luxury cars. They didn't know the hours I'd spent building my small business from scratch. They didn't know, or care, that I'd been quietly paying for my own life without asking for a dime. But I didn't say a word that night. I didn't argue or defend myself. I simply smiled, excused myself early, and walked out of that restaurant. Little did they know, it wouldn't be their restaurant for much longer. Growing up, I learned early that in my family, value wasn't something you were born with, it was something you had to prove. And proving it meant one thing: success. Not the quiet, steady kind where you build a life brick by brick. No. The loud kind. Degrees from shiny universities, job titles with words like executive or director, and the sort of lifestyle that made neighbors whisper with envy. My sister excelled at that game. 2 years older, Jessica was the golden child. Valedictorian, internship at a Fortune 500 company, engaged to a man whose name came with a LinkedIn profile longer than my résumé. Every family gathering became a stage for her achievements. My parents would beam as they recited her promotions like poetry, and me? Well, I took a different path. While Jessica was in boardrooms, I was hauling supplies in a beat-up van for the small catering business I co-founded. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I worked 14-hour days, burned through savings more than once, and spent countless nights wondering if I'd made a mistake, but I never complained, not to them, not to anyone. I thought if I stayed quiet and worked hard enough, they'd eventually see. Maybe one day, when my business finally took off, I'd earn my place at the table. Yet every phone call, every holiday visit, reminded me where I stood. At family dinners, I'd hear little comments like, "You're still doing, what is it again?" "Oh, right. Catering." Followed by awkward silence, as if I'd confessed to a failing hobby instead of a growing company. I kept thinking, just wait. One day, they'll be proud. But deep down, I was starting to understand something painful. In this family, pride was reserved for people like Jessica. For people who looked successful, who fit the image my parents wanted to show the world. So I became used to the sidelines. In family photos, I was always a little out of frame, half hidden behind someone else. Not by accident, but because I had learned to make myself smaller. To give space for the ones who mattered more. But all of that changed the night I was told, directly and without shame, that there was no room for me at their table. I remember that evening vividly, the warm glow of the restaurant lights, the soft murmur of laughter spilling from the private dining room, and the faint smell of roasted garlic and wine in the air. I had arrived early, dressed neatly, a bottle of wine in hand. I even rehearsed a little joke in the car, hoping this year might be different. But as I stepped inside, I noticed the table. A long, grand one set for 12. Every seat filled with family, their faces alight as they welcomed Jessica and her boyfriend like royalty. I stood there for a moment, unsure, until my mother finally looked up and offered a polite smile, not warm, not excited. "Oh, Ryan. You're here. There wasn't enough room at the main table, but they've set up another one for you." She gestured toward a tiny round table near the back. It was tucked beside a service station where waiters scurried past with plates stacked high. One chair. One place setting. Alone. I froze. My fingers tightened around the wine bottle, and for a second I thought about asking why. But then my father's voice cut in, low but firm. "You'll understand when you're more successful, son. Don't make this awkward." A few heads turned. Someone chuckled nervously. Jessica avoided my gaze, busy adjusting her boyfriend's tie. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I set the wine bottle down on a side table, walked quietly to my assigned seat, and sat there as laughter and toasts filled the room. My food arrived, but I couldn't eat. I couldn't taste a thing, and as I sat there, staring at the untouched plate, something in me shifted. I didn't feel anger, not yet. Just a deep, cutting clarity. I left the restaurant before dessert was served. No one tried to stop me, not even a polite, half-hearted, "Stay a little longer." The sound of their laughter trailed behind me. As I walked out into the cold night air. I sat in my car for a long while, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring blankly at the windshield. The streets were quiet except for the occasional car passing by. And in that stillness, a single thought echoed through my mind: maybe this is who I am to them. The forgotten one. The failure. But as the silence stretched on, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was resolve. A quiet, heavy certainty that I would no longer beg for a place at a table that had never been mine. That night, I went home, opened my laptop, and stared at the spreadsheets for my catering business. I saw numbers that looked unimpressive too. Most but held years of sweat, tears, and sacrifice. I remembered every 4 a.m. start, every event where I served food with a smile even when my body ached, every sleepless night wondering if I'd make payroll, and I made a decision. No more playing small. No more waiting for recognition that would never come. For the next 2 years, I threw everything I had into the business. I expanded into corporate events. Hired a small, hungry team who believed in the vision. Reinvented our menu and branding until we weren't just another catering service. We were the name companies fought to book. While my family gossiped about Jessica's wedding plans and her boyfriend's promotions, I was quietly building something they couldn't even imagine. I didn't post about my wins. I didn't send updates. I let them assume I was still struggling, still finding my way. But in truth, the numbers in my bank account grew. The business grew. And so did I. They had no idea the quiet one they'd relegated to the corner table was about to own the entire building they once gathered in so proudly. The opportunity came like a whisper, almost too subtle to notice at first. One evening, after wrapping up a corporate event, I overheard a conversation between the restaurant's owner and a vendor. Business hadn't been good, they said. Rising costs, competition, and a string of bad reviews had taken their toll. The place, the same one where my family had humiliated me, was up for sale. Quietly. I didn't hesitate. Within a week, I arranged a meeting with the owner. I didn't walk in flaunting my success or wearing a tailored suit to announce my arrival. I dressed simply. Listened more than I spoke. And when I finally slid the signed papers across the table, the owner looked relieved, not realizing the irony of who now held the keys. The sale closed faster than I expected. Overnight, the restaurant that had once been a stage for my family's pride and my exclusion became mine, but I didn't plaster my name on the walls or send a triumphant message to my parents. No, I kept my ownership discreet. The same staff remained. The same menus. On the surface, nothing had changed. I wasn't seeking revenge in the traditional sense. No gloating. No announcements. What I wanted was something quieter, sharper. To let them feel what it's like to be small. And so, months later, when my sister's engagement dinner was booked at that very restaurant, I didn't interfere. I let the reservation stand. I instructed the staff to treat them like any other guests. The day of the event, I sat in my office upstairs, reviewing reports as the sound of clinking glasses and polite laughter drifted up through the floorboards. I didn't need to see them to know the scene: Jessica in her designer dress, her fiancé basking in compliments, my parents beaming as they introduced themselves to anyone who'd listen. They didn't know that the humble failure they had once shunned now owned the walls around them, the table beneath their plates, the lights above their heads. I could have walked down, could have watched the shock ripple through the room. But I didn't. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it simply watches, patient and silent. It happened by accident. A few weeks after Jessica's engagement dinner, I received a text from one of the restaurant's longtime servers, a photo of my parents, sitting at a table near the window, enjoying lunch. "Your family's back." The message read. I smiled faintly but said nothing. I didn't need to see them. I didn't need to confront them. But fate had other plans. As the server cleared their plates, my father, ever the charmer, asked casually, "So, is the new owner any better than the last guy? Heard this place got bought out recently." The server hesitated, then replied with a hint of amusement, "Oh, he's great. Really turned the place around. Quiet type, keeps to himself, but you know him." My mother frowned. "We do." "Yes," the server said brightly. "Ryan. Your son." Silence. Utter, suffocating silence. The words hung in the air like a dense fog as realization crept across their faces. Jessica's fiancé, seated beside them, nearly choked on his drink. My father's expression hardened first, not with pride, but with something more complicated. My mother's lips parted slightly, as if to speak, but no words came. They didn't finish their drinks. They didn't order dessert. They left quietly, the sound of the door closing behind them carrying a weight I could feel even from my office. Upstairs, for once, it was their turn to sit at the edge of someone else's table. They never called. Not that day. Not the next. Not even weeks later. At first, I half expected a barrage of messages, accusations, apologies, anything. But there was only silence. And strangely, that silence felt louder than words ever could. I didn't reach out either. I didn't need to. Some nights, I'd walk through the restaurant after closing, the chairs stacked neatly, the air still carrying faint traces of wine and roasted herbs. I'd run my fingers along the polished tables, the same ones where I once sat, unseen, unwelcome, but now? I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I didn't need their praise, their validation, their place at the table. Because I'd built my own. People often ask if I regret not confronting them, not rubbing the truth in their faces. The answer is no. Power isn't about shouting in someone's face, it's about walking into a room and knowing you no longer need to explain yourself. So I let them keep their silence. Let them sit in the space they created. As for me, I stayed at my table. The one I earned, and this time, I didn't make room for anyone who had never made room for me.